Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks for joining me on Phantoms and Monsters Radio. I welcome all new listeners and members to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. So, by request, I am going to talk about Djinn and a few other Middle Eastern anomalies tonight. In Muslim tradition, a Djinn is a spirit often capable of assuming human or animal form and exercising supernatural influence over people. It's like a poltergeist as far as activity, though a poltergeist is generally developed from a thought form manifestation that may or may not be associated with existing earthbound entities. Now, according to legend, the Djinn were the first inhabitants of this world, where they lived for thousands of years before humanity arrived. To make room for humans, angels took the Djinn out of this world and placed them in a dimension that parallels our own. There they stay hidden from our view. They can see and interact with us, but we have difficulty seeing them. Now, they are cloaked in mystery, and it suits their covert purpose. Now, the goal of most Djinn is to retake the world, which they feel rightfully belongs to them. To succeed, they must make humanity give up stewardship of this reality. They are accomplishing this by stealth and disguise. They have great powers and plenty of time. Now, for their life and for centuries, and shape-shifting Djinn may be responsible for many forms of paranormal phenomena and experiences, such as UFOs, shadow people, ghosts, poltergeist, demonic possession, etc. In such ways, they gain access to us that enables them to steal our life force and information about us and to manipulate and use us without revealing their true form and purpose. Now, these negative experiences are on the rise. There have been a lot of reports over the years, or what people refer to as Djinn. Are they real? We really don't know. But traditionally, they seem to be concentrated mostly in the Middle East and even the South Asian areas as well. But there are people who do believe that they exist worldwide. So anyway, let's get started, and we'll talk on the other side.
We live in a reality of phantoms and monsters. They exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it.
So before I go any further, I want to mention that this channel is made possible by clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by you sharing our programming. Super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box. Now, the Buy Me a Coffee link is also shown below, so thank you for your consideration. Your comments are always welcome. Tell me which account you find interesting in the presentation or suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, for their commitment to me and the channel. It's always appreciated. Now, if you're in the chat and have a question, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each of them after the presentation is finished. So, Djinn and Middle Eastern tales. I'm going to begin with several unexplained and supernatural incidents that were reported in the modern Middle Eastern media. Now, a young Omani man disappears under mysterious circumstances when he was driving his motorbike near a Mudar mountain. A resident of the village of the young man pointed out the young man went last Wednesday to a mountain near the village by his motorbike, but he didn't come back yet. The absence of the young man prompted his family to ask neighbors about him, and during the search found his motorbike next to the mountain without any other trace of him. Now, police were informed immediately, and they rushed to the location with search dogs and helicopters, but didn't find the man. Now, residents believe the mountain is inhabited by the Djinn. They disclosed that many mysterious incidents occur, and stories are narrated about the Djinn who live in the mountain. Residents also confirmed that the young man was kidnapped by a group of Djinn. They say after such incidents, religious scholars need to interfere and release the young man from the clutches of the Djinn. It is reported that one of the sheiks had a vision and spoke to the Djinn who kept the young man in a grotto in the mountain. Large number of citizens visited the mountain, where some of them brought sacrifices for the Djinn to release the young man. Omani army members surrounded the mountain and eventually entered, but as of today, and this has been many years now, the young man has never been found. So in 2005, Saudi police intensified a campaign to search for a Yemeni girl who was not seen in her village for more than 40 days. Her relatives believed that she was snatched by genies, or Djinn. After failing to locate the 23-year-old girl, her family started to distribute leaflets and stick posters on mosques in the hope that they will get any information about her whereabouts. We are living in tragic conditions because of my sister's disappearance, her brother Ahmad Ali said. She has been under the spell of Djinn, and this may have to do with her disappearance. It's nearly 40 days now, and there's no trace of her despite an intensifying police search. The media said the girl left her house in her mountainous village near the western town of Taif and never returned. Some people told police that they saw her walking on a hill not far from her house, then vanished again. Her brothers and some residents in the village said she sometimes appears at night and then suddenly disappears. They told police that they believe she has been haunted and taken by Djinn. Ali said his unmarried sister was carrying a bag and a dress when she left the house 6 weeks ago. He said she had run away from home a year ago, but was found at another house on the same day. And on that day, she was with her other sisters washing on the second floor of the house. She then went down to the ground floor. My sisters waited for her, but she never came back, he said. Now, before she vanished, we used to take her to some Quran reciters and scholars. She used to walk into their places, but we had to carry her on our way out as she appeared to be in a trance. A red fluid sometimes oozed out of her ears and nose. It wasn't blood, and it had a strange odor. Some scholars told us that she's haunted, and others said that she's under the Djinn guardianship. In a recent follow-up to this account, the girl has not yet reappeared, and she's been missing for nearly 20 years. Now, in December 2012, mysterious fires that have broken out seemingly for no apparent reason in the house of the Tobruk family in Srit province over the last 4 months have aroused great curiosity in the region. The Tobruk family is distraught over the mysterious fires, as between 300 to 400 fire incidents have occurred in the last 4 months. Almost all the family's belongings and furniture have been reduced to ashes for no known reason. The Tobruk family's household items apparently catch fire spontaneously, with some people believing that the fires have been caused by supernatural forces. Now, the father of the family, Zeki Tobrok, said that between 300 to 400 fires have erupted in 4 months, stating that they had to move out of the house 4 times in as many months. Tobrok said that such mysterious events have continued to happen in each house they have moved into. Similar mysterious fires have also broken out in the classroom of a third grade student, M. Tobrok. Now, the coat, notebooks, books, and several other items belonging to Tobrok caught fire spontaneously in front of the students and the teacher's eyes in the classroom. The teacher stated that they searched Tobrok for any material or substance that could have caused the fire, but they didn't find anything. Now, the CERT governor's office, the CERT provincial mufti's office, and the CERT University have all taken an interest in the family. CERT Governor Ahmed Adine, who also spoke to the agency, defined the incidents as supernatural and said it was impossible to understand having seen the many items that apparently spontaneously combusted. Adine also said that the governor's office is giving food to the family 3 times a day as they could not cook any meals in their house. Now, CERT University Rector Murat Rahman said the university is extremely interested in the incidents and has established a team to investigate the possible reasons for such mysterious fires. Now, CERT province Mutfi Farooq Avras pointed out that the fires might be due to the Djinn. In Islam, the Djinn are spirit beings that can be good or evil. Avras stated, according to our faith, there are beings called Djinn. The fires might have been started by such beings. Now, these next accounts are pretty odd. What supposedly occurs at a Djinn wedding. Dancers and guests with animal limbs. Other supernatural activities are witnessed by outsiders. These accounts are now part of the Djinn mythological fabric. It was in the early hours of the morning on a particular day in the early 2000s when a middle-aged woman was found unconscious on the road in a Kuwaiti suburb. When she was taken to the hospital, she had a horrific story to tell the authorities. Apparently, she was a musician, and she had been hired to provide entertainment for a gathering in a large villa in the neighborhood she was found in. As the night went on, however, she came to realize that several of her clients weren't entirely human. She tried to escape and evidently failed. Now, in the early 2000s, stories appeared in the Kuwaiti media detailing the run-in with a hapless victim that a hapless victim had with beings that would normally be confined to the dark reaches of mythology and folklore. Now, this musician was a middle-aged woman who plays a traditional Kuwaiti instrument. She received a call from a prospective client who wanted to hire her for her services during the month of Ramadan. Since it is inappropriate to perform music during Ramadan, the witness initially refused. But the caller insisted and tripled her usual fee, eventually persuading her to go. The caller sent their own driver to pick her up, and what began as a usual music event suddenly took a sharp turn for the supernatural. Now, the party started early in the evening, but continued until midnight, at which time some of the attendees began to act bizarrely. A group of young girls in the center of the room, for example, started to dance very aggressively. They moved in such a vigorous manner that their legs began showing under their long dresses, revealing that their legs were not, in fact, those of humans, but rather bore a closer resemblance to horse legs. Terrified, the woman ran out of the party where she found the driver who had picked her up waiting for her. She quickly got into the car and refused to comment when the driver asked her what was wrong due to being too distraught to speak coherently. After a couple of minutes, however, she had calmed down enough to be asked again by the driver. She told him that some of the partygoers did not have human legs, prompting the driver to reply, "You mean just like mine? before revealing his legs under his clothes. Like the young girls at the gathering, they were those of an animal. The woman was hysterical with fear at that point, and so threw herself from the car and landed on the street, rendering herself unconscious. The next day, after reporting the bizarre incident, she decided to return to the villa accompanied by the local authorities. However, the villa was gone. It had completely vanished, leaving nothing behind but an empty yard. Now, the following account may have been a separate incident or a more detailed version of the previous account. Nora was a Kuwaiti drummer and singer. In the 90s, she was a hit. Almost everyone in Kuwait knew her name, and she was known for singing at weddings, parties, and other formal events. Nora was part of a band that was beyond successful. Now, like any other normal day for Nora and her band, she got a phone call, and just like every day, she answered and stated her name and who she was. On the other side was a person explaining that they would like Nora and her band to perform at a wedding. Weddings back then in Kuwait were usually hosted in houses, unlike nowadays where they get hosted in luxurious hotels and wedding venues. Like every other request that she had accepted, as if everything was normal. Nora and her band were unaware of what was going to happen. As they arrived at the house, they noticed it was a huge mansion exteriorized with expensive decorations. They thought, oh well, just another day singing at a rich person's house. So they knocked on the door and the woman invited them in. They sat down on their floor seating as back then they used to sit on the floor with a hard type of pillow for them to sit on. Now, as they sat down, a woman came and went just to greet Nora and her band, and she was well liked and, as said before, very famous. But as they kissed on the cheeks, one of Nora's bandmates noticed that the cheeks of the woman were very hot. It's like every single one of them had a fever and had very manlish feel to them. Nora had noticed this as well, but she told her to brush it off. As Nora and her band were performing for 30 minutes into the wedding, Nora's bandmate was so frightened at the sight she saw. The women who were dancing at the wedding had hands that were very hairy, and as they lifted their skirts, their legs revealed to be lamb's legs stabbed with knives and forks. The bandmate was nervous and very scared, as any of us would be. Nora told her, don't worry, we will be done soon. If we cause chaos, they will be suspicious, and who knows what they will do. The bandmate complied, but still was very scared. As the bride and groom entered, they sat on this figure with its mouth open, with two little chairs for a man and a woman to sit on. 5 minutes after the bride and groom entered the room, the lights went out, and it was pitch black. Nora's bandmate ran for her life, and Nora and the rest of the band ran for it as well, taking only a few personal belongings and leaving the rest. As they left, Nora looked behind her and noticed that once was a mansion was an abandoned house. As they ran, a man came to them and asked them, "What's wrong?" Seeing a bunch of women running at 3 a.m. wasn't the norm, of course. The man, desperate to help, asked what he could do. The bandmate said, that house, it's filled with Djinn. We saw them with our own eyes. The man said, that house is abandoned. Why did you go in there? The woman said, it wasn't when we saw it. The man was very scared and gave them a ride back to their house. The day after, Nora and her band retired and never sang again. Now, this witness report states, in the summer of 2000, my cousin and her friend, both 11 years old at the time and lived in Beirut, Lebanon, were riding their bicycles. It was in the evening on a Sunday night. They live in a very small town, so it's safe for children to be outside at night. Anyway, they were by the town park where they saw a figure seated beneath the pavilion. This was highly unusual, as the park was usually empty at this time. Curious, they drew closer and saw that it was a woman who looked to be in her mid-30s, seated at the bench with a painting and an art easel. She called out to them in a monotone voice, like an automated voice one would hear on an answering machine. As they biked closer, they saw that she was wearing what my cousin described as gypsy clothing, colorful and mismatched thrift store attire. Her expression was entirely blank. She stared through, and rather than at them, as if they weren't even there. She began to ask them generic questions like, "Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing?" etc., in her monotone voice. Her movements were stiff and awkward. Her eyebrows and lips appeared painted on, and her skin was like plastic. In short, she was like a mannequin come to life. The painting that she was working on portrayed the night sky accompanied by the moon and stars, each with faces showing different expressions. The two kids felt dread that grew and grew, their instincts telling them to depart as soon as possible, so they did. They rode their bikes a brief distance away and then returned shortly after to see if she was still there. She and her art set were gone without a trace. Looking through the surrounding sidewalks revealed no trace of her either. This is odd for several reasons. First, she was barefoot with no vehicle or bicycle nearby. If one had come by to pick her up, they would have seen and heard it. Second, she had a large and cumbersome art set with her, which would have been awkward and an impediment to carry by hand. Third, they were gone for less than a minute, scarcely enough time for her to depart the park. The incident bothers my cousin to this day. Now, between May and December 2010, a series of strange incidents occurred in the home of 73-year-old widow Zainab Suleiman in her village in Saudi Arabia. Objects disappeared and reappeared. Clothes were found cut to shreds. Food scraps were strewn across the bed, and large quantities of salt and smelly fish sauce were dumped into the cooking pots. It was all decidedly annoying, but Sanab and her family, a widowed daughter-in-law and two granddaughters, didn't find it particularly frightening. They were merely being pestered, they assumed, by a mildly mischievous spirit. Even when a pair of pants missing for 3 days reappeared inside the refrigerator, they remained calm, hoping the imp would tire of its tricks. But in mid-December, the weirdness escalated dangerously. Over the next 10 weeks, dozens of small fires broke out on clothes, rugs, linoleum, and mattresses throughout the residence. Sometimes several occurred within a few minutes. One hectic day, there were no fewer than 78 fires. Although all were quickly extinguished and surprisingly little damage was done, Zainab didn't get a lot of sleep during those weird weeks. Her flimsy wooden dwelling, elevated on stumps and packed with clothes and bolts of cloth, was a venerable tinderbox. She didn't dare leave it unattended. Now, news of the activity spread quickly. On January 4th, a group of Muslim holy men arrived and declared the house was infested by invisible entities known as Djinn. Djinn have featured prominently in Middle Eastern folklore since time immemorial, and Muhammad, under the direction of the angel Gabriel, incorporated them into Muslim theology. Many of the tricks they reputedly play are highly reminiscent of those often attributed in other cultures to poltergeist. Over several months, a plethora of holy men conducted exorcisms until the Djinn weakened and left the location, scrawling a message on a banknote, "Goodbye, everyone." Some aspects of the case strongly suggest the episode was genuinely paranormal. First of all, Zainab never sought to profit from the episode. It had, in fact, cost her dearly. Many of her possessions were destroyed, and she paid the Muslim priest for her failed exorcism. Also, she seemed completely honest, and it would have been virtually impossible for any of the family to start the fires without her noticing. No one could have hoaxed them. Also, no family member had an obvious motive to hoax the affair. As well, independent witnesses saw objects move and disappear. Also, the steady escalation of weirdness, beginning with objects moving and disappearing, progressing to the slashing of clothes, then to the weird message, and finally to the fires, conforms to patterns of unexplained behavior noted elsewhere. The very fact that more than 200 fires occurred without at least one of them doing serious damage, or for that matter, completely consuming the flimsy dwelling, does seem almost miraculous. Uncannily, localized fires have been noted at other locations. Also, the surges in weird activity that occurred when strangers arrived corresponds with known poltergeist activity. The presence of adolescent girls is sometimes seen as a hallmark of a genuine poltergeist case. And the Djinn's rather pointless message was reminiscent of others found at poltergeist sites. After the holy men failed to cleanse the house, the rate of fire starting sharply increased. Similar sudden escalations of activity after attempted exorcisms have been noted at many other sites. Now, a Jordanian man tells me that a red-eyed winged humanoid encounter that his sister had in their family apartment in Amman. The description parallels the Chicago Mothman encounters. Now, this is what he told me. This took place 20 years ago in Amman, Jordan. I don't remember the exact date, but it was June of 1997 around midnight. I was 17 at the time. My sister was 14. She was trying to get to sleep in her bedroom, but it was a hot night, so she got up and opened the window. As she got back in her bed, something crawled through the window and stood at the foot of her bed. It was dark in the room, with only dim light coming through the window. She saw a winged creature almost as tall as the ceiling, dark black with a crest on the top of its head like a pterodactyl. She couldn't make out any facial features or tell the texture of the body other than the slight sheen on the side of the light that was hitting it. The most notable feature she noticed was its blazing red eyes as she described them. When she locked eyes with the creature, a feeling of shock, dread, and fear took over her. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She couldn't move or look away. She felt the creature tell her not to make a sound in her mind, as if it knew she was trying to scream. This lasted about 30 seconds as the creature stared at her silently while remaining motionless. Suddenly, the creature turns toward the window and darted outside like a spear with a whoosh sound as it exited. We lived on the 5th-story apartment with a 50-foot drop out the window. A few seconds passed and she let out the most blood-curdling scream I'd ever heard, which made me jump out of bed in my bedroom and dash towards her room. I flipped the light switch on as I burst through her bedroom door to see her sitting on her bed, white as a ghost, shaking and crying. My parents woke up and came running into her room as well. It took about 10 minutes for her to calm down enough to speak coherently. She told us that she had a nightmare. So a couple days later, she told me of what had happened. She seemed reluctant and scared to recall the details of the other night. I didn't know what to make of it, and we didn't speak of it again, as I felt that it would be best at the time. Now, fast forward 20 years, and I'm reading an article about the Chicago Mothman on your blog. The more eyewitness accounts I read about, the more I thought of that night. I decided to contact my sister and tell her about what I had been reading. She seemed to get mad about me bringing this back up to her. She told me what happened and is still terrified to this day. She is angry with me for bringing the memory back to light for her, but I convinced her that the story needs to get out there because of what everyone is seeing in Chicago. Hopefully, this account helps someone and sheds more light on whatever this thing was, if indeed it is the same creature that turned up in Chicago. Now, an Egyptian Air Force fighter pilot recalls a strange event while flying patrol one night. A bright, unidentified light was seen by him and other pilots, and it shook them all. Now, he contacted me. I am a former Egyptian Air Force Mirage 2000 pilot. I was one of the unlucky few who got selected to serve their mandatory years as a pilot. It was considered unlucky because you stayed in the Army a lot longer than soldiers and officer because of the amount of training that comes with flying a fighter jet. Anyway, fast forward 2 years. I'm a fully trained Mirage pilot, though I don't know much about dogfighting and fighter jet weapons, as I didn't take it on full time. Like I said, this was a mandatory service everyone had to do. It's just that I was selected to be a pilot for some reason. I only flew like 6 times in the 3.5 years I served. Now, it's pitch black one night, and I go out for patrol on the Red Sea border between Egypt and Saudi Arabia. My friend is commanded to patrol the border between the Sinai and Israel. That's usually the most active patrol border. Here I was flying in Egyptian airspace when an extremely bright light shone through the cockpit, almost blinding me for a moment. It was so bright it got right through the tinting of the windows and my helmet. It was almost like that memory wiper in Men in Black movies. It lasted at least a minute, so just as I was about to call this in to get a possible explanation, the tower guy starts frantically sort of shouting, but not loudly, like he's talking fast and in a very worried tone, and I can't hear him through the radio that well. I couldn't tell what he was saying. I tuned into the frequency the other pilots were on, and they were all just as shaken as me. Now, 30 minutes later, a calmer voice instructs us to all land immediately, as there is an emergency being investigated by more experienced pilots, the dogfighters. So we land 2 at a time. I steer my plane into the hangar and I get out. Now everyone has this frightened look on their face, eyes wide open, mouth shut, and sort of lost. Like you talk to them and they're like, sorry, what were you saying again? So I go straight to the base commander, hoping for an explanation that puts my mind at ease. When I got there, I found that he was in his office on the phone shouting about an unidentified aircraft infiltrating Egyptian airspace, and that's when I really got scared. I finished my mandatory service years ago now, and I'm currently studying law in the United States, but I constantly think about that night. Now, there have been claims that the late Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein first met an extraterrestrial in 1989 when a cylindrical UFO crashed in the mountains southeast of Kirkuk. It states, in 1989, a mountainous region several dozen kilometers east or southeast of Kirkuk was the UFO crash that was soon cordoned off by Saddam's military. The craft was seized, evaluated, and kept hidden in great secrecy. The crash of this alien spacecraft made a long trench in the ground. The vehicle was shaped like a cylinder, more precisely like a bullet, 12 meters long and 2.5 meters in diameter, silver in color. The body of one dead alien was supposedly found inside. The alien was Asian-looking, almost 1.5 meters in height, with a big head, big eyes, and 4-fingered hands. The second member of the crew left the capsule through the opening at the back of the craft. A few days afterwards, Iraqi soldiers in a nearby mountain caught this second alien. The entity was obviously frightened and gave off squeaking noises. It was said that Saddam was afraid that other aliens would arrive to save the crew, so the recovery was made very quickly. The Iraqi army secretly transported the craft at night to Erbil, where the special underground tunnel with hangars was constructed to hide and study the spacecraft. Natural caves existed in the region were used for this purpose. The body of the dead alien pilot was also stored there in a special cryogenic container. The underground facility was supposedly located in the mountains southeast of Erbil. Now, this last account And I talked about this account in previous presentation a while ago, but I believe it bears repeating because it's related to a military veteran's experience in Iraq. Now, if there was something to do with aliens or Djinn or something else, that's up to you to decide. Anyway, again, I'm going to read this. In 2005, my husband, who I'll refer to as Bill, and I purchased a home near Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Bill was stationed there, and we figured that he would most likely stay since he was a wounded veteran from Operation Iraqi Freedom and had accepted a permanent position at headquarters. The house was built in the 1890s and had a Victorian style to it, though there had been several renovations and additions. We had 3 children, all girls, who were aged 9, 11, and 15 at the time we bought the house. There was a lot of space for everyone, including a large yard with woodland surrounding the property. Now, when Bill returned from rehab after suffering his injuries, he didn't elaborate on how he sustained his injuries, nor did he talk about his time in Iraq. We had been married for 12 years before he was deployed, and I was content to live as an Army spouse. Now, when he returned, things did not really change until we had settled into the new house. Now, one morning I woke up and noticed that Bill wasn't in bed. It was around 6:30 in the morning, and he usually slept until at least 7:15. Then he'd get up, eat breakfast, and head to headquarters. I woke the girls for school and made my way downstairs to the kitchen to start making breakfast. When I walked into the kitchen, I noticed Bill was seated at the table, arms down his side and staring straight ahead. It shocked me because I had never seen him like this. I sat across the table and looked directly at him. After a minute or so, he looked into my eyes and said, "I need to tell you something." He decided to stay home that day while I proceeded to feed my girls and get them off to school. Bill continued to sit at the table the entire time, not saying a word. I could tell that the girls were a bit confused since he did not speak to them at all. When I returned home from dropping the girls off at school, Bill was sitting in the living room drinking a cup of coffee and reading the newspaper. I sat down on the sofa fearing that I was about to hear bad news. He looked at me and said, "I think I'm going to be leaving soon." I was in shock. "What exactly are you telling me?" I asked. He looked away for a second and looked back towards me. "It has something to do with what happened in Mosul. His division was deployed in northern Iraq near the city of Mosul." His hands and lips started to quiver. "Something happened that I can't explain. I wasn't able to report it to command because of the ramifications." He stood up and walked over to the sofa and sat down beside me. "The wounds I sustained were not from enemy ordnance. I was abducted by a group of people or something." He explained that his platoon was on night patrol east of the city when a firefight broke out. Several of the soldiers went down, requiring a retreat to get the wounded out of harm's way. At one point, Bill was alone, covering several soldiers who helped others back towards the city. Things had quieted down, and Bill was about to head back towards base when suddenly he was knocked off his feet by a tremendous loud thud. The next thing he remembered was that he was lying face up on a table in a spacious room with bright yellow lights all around. There were 4 beings that looked human, but were dressed in thick, dark, wool-like robes. Each had small circular caps on their heads that reflected the yellow light. One of the people told Bill that he was to become one of them, and that he had no choice in the matter. After that, he had no further memory of the beings. When he became conscious, he was in a medical helicopter on his way to Baghdad. He was told he was being transported for medical treatment at another location. He was then given what he thought was a sedative. He woke sometime later in a dark room, unable to move. After a time, a nurse came into the room and told him that he was in Germany and being treated for his wounds. She injected something into the IV, then left, and again the room went dark. Bill thought from that time forward he was kept in a semi-conscious state for a long period of time, possibly for several weeks. About a month after sustaining his injuries, he was admitted to a hospital for rehab. This was the first time that he was able to see the extent of his injuries as well as an explanation as to what he was facing. Both of Bill's legs had deep lung scars on the front and back. He was told that he lost a considerable amount of nerve and muscle tissue, but that he would be able to recover much of his strength and sensation through rehabilitation. He inquired about surgery records, but was told no surgery was performed. He then asked how the wounds were closed. The physician said there were no description of sutures or skin grafting on the record. The physician agreed with Bill that it seemed very irregular. For over a year, Bill tried to get answers but was stonewalled by military and medical officials. When he returned home, I was surprised Bill was able to move around as well as he did, even though the scars on his legs indicated significant trauma. As Bill sat beside me, his voice started to shake. They will come back for me. I have no way of avoiding it. I was still awestruck by everything I had heard. I said, "Is there any way the medical staff at the fort can help you?" He looked away and said, "It's beyond that point." We continued to live a normal life despite what Bill had told me. He never mentioned the incident again, and I tried to forget it. As time went by, I assumed Bill had suffered some form of battlefield stress disorder, though he maintained a busy and productive schedule at home and at work. One warm evening in July 2007, Bill left us. He had been working in the yard when suddenly my youngest girl let out a horrific scream. I ran out the back door into the yard and witnessed Bill's lifeless body lying near the poplar tree. He had taken a pocket knife and drawn it across his throat. It was so abrupt and unexpected. Bill had stated that he did not want a military funeral and wanted to be cremated. After the coroner's inquiry, it was determined that Bill had taken his own life. Last year, I was cleaning out Bill's clothes and personal effects when I discovered an envelope in his footlocker that he kept in the garage. I pulled it out and read the single sheet of paper. It read, "They told me it was time to leave. I'm sorry, though I'm sure you'll understand." No, I don't understand. So, folks, you got questions, please put them up into the chat. I want to thank Nita Hiltner for her $3 super sticker. Thank you very much. As well as I want to thank Nancy Malcolm for her $5 super sticker. So, let's see what we got here. First question from Nancy Malcolm. I've been told that mischievous poltergeist activity can be caused by Djinn children playing. Rosemary Ellen Godley wrote a book titled The Vengeful Djinn years ago before she passed away. I did read the book a bit, and I think she did mention something to that effect. Now, I don't know how close that is or if that really does happen. The a lot of Djinn activity is described as being very poltergeist-like, but poltergeists are thought form manifestations for the most part. So I don't know if that's actually true or not, but Djinn children playing, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. I really can't answer that. The next question, Sir Wolf asked, Alon, do you know what the smokeless fire description of them relates to and anything similar with the Native American people? I don't know if it's related to the Native American people, but I have heard of the smokeless fire. It seems to just manifest all of a sudden. Now, is it the same type of fire that I had read to you about starting in homes and such? I don't know. Is it a specific type of immolation that comes from Djinn. It may very well be. I did remember reading something, and I don't know if it was in Rosemary's book or not, but the fire that the Djinn are supposed to be start are a very much bluer type of flame. So I don't know if that causes smokeless fire or not. Dagnammit. Are there different categories of Djinn? There are. I'm not very familiar with the phenomena. Um, I think it kind of goes on the same line from what I have written about different levels of either manifestation or hauntings or possession, oppression. I think it's kind of similar to most haunting like levels, but it's different in a way that they seem to be able to manifest in different ways. In other words, they shapeshift or turn into humans, almost like a skinwalker type thing. A witch, a Navajo witch, or a Hopi witch would turn into some type of animal being or humanoid being. But as far as other different categories, I really don't know that. It'd be good to look up though. Sir Wolf, what are the good Djinn? What are the good Djinn? What have they done? I think that some Djinn, from accounts I've read a lot of short accounts where they just seem to act like angels. Now, in the Muslim tradition, in Islam, they're supposed to be very related to angels. Angels were supposed to have been moving them into another dimension when humans arrived. Do they mimic angels? I think it very well may be. So that's the only way I can answer. But yeah, I think that's what it is. Jan's Roost. Wow, Lon, are these Djinn just another form of an evil spirit? Well, evil is evil. There's malevolency, there's benevolence, there do seem to be good and bad spirits in different cultures and different levels, different categories. I don't know, but yeah, I would say it's just another, like you said, it probably is just another form of an evil spirit. Any more questions, folks? Yeah, I personally am not really into the Djinn phenomena. I've read a lot of accounts. I've had people send me short accounts. That's why I kind of read to you what was coming through the media in the Middle East and very detailed accounts that people did tell me. Savage Grammy. Would sage or sprinkling salt be helpful in getting rid of Djinn or other from our homes? Quite frankly, I don't buy into the whole sage or the sage thing at all. I would say save that for a shaman or a native medicine man or someone. I just don't think sage works. I mean, I have tried to use it. I have seen others try to use it. And in fact, I think sage can actually escalate in some cases. Sprinkling salt, I do use salt, but I use salt for containment. If there's energy in a room, I will use it to either put it in the corners of the room or on the windowsills or even around the bed or around the home to contain or to keep out some type of energies. I've used it several times, and I've used in some bigger cases, especially when it seems to be a last resort. But I have used it. I use blue salt. I use black salt in particular. But if someone contacts me about using it at a location where I can't get to, I just tell them to use regular sea salt or rock salt, something that's got some substantial volume to it that they can put outside or put, in a home that they can get up later. I recommend they not keep it there for a long period of time. Palo Santo wood, Marla brings that does work. I have used that in the past. I have just used regular sandalwood as well. Robert Presser. Are Djinn affected by holy water? I don't know. I really don't know. I have never read anybody using holy water, since most of the accounts are reported by Muslims, and they don't use holy water in the same effect that holy water would be in a Christian church. But no, I really don't know. Anything else, folks? Okay, well, I want to thank all of you for coming on tonight and dealing with my less than normal knowledge about Djinn, but I had a request to post it and to do a show about it, so there you go. Anyway, if you do, please like, subscribe, and share. And if you do have a sighting or a report that you'd like to contact me about, send it to me at lonstricklerphantomsandmonsters.com. So until next Friday night, you all have a good weekend, have a safe weekend, and I will see you later. So take care.